Hello, good afternoon. My name is Igor Skrzyczkowskis, and I am a teacher of the High School for Financial Intelligence. And for me, it's very nice to receive this invitation to make presentation for you in the field of the development and implementation of the best practice of financial intelligence. And today I would like to use just speaking today with you, I would like to use experience of my country, Lithuania, because just a few words about myself. I started work in law enforcement agencies of Republic of Lithuania in '93, in July '93, after 5 years studying in the St. Petersburg State University, where I studied sociology. And after I came back to Lithuania, it happened in July '93, I was recruited for activity in the Ministry of Interior of the Economic Crime Investigation Department. And working in this structure, law enforcement structure, I was involved in the anti-money laundering issues quite early, and more or less I spent now for anti-money laundering, financial intelligence, combating of terrorist financing more as 20 years. And today I would like to share my experience in some, but just only in few fields of this very wide area, and present you only a few questions. First of all, speaking about any country, any national level, we're speaking about few issues. First, about development of legislative and legal framework, speaking about legislation, implementation of international rules. Secondly, what is very important, technical level, creation of the financial intelligence unit, which, for example, in Russia, this function implement financial monitoring service, governmental institution. And we're speaking about development of such institution, entity, and of course this entity, main element of the activity of this entity is receiving, collection and analysis of information which provides banks and other financial institutions. We will discuss about that a little bit later. And a very important element of our activity of financial intelligence unit, of course, is without any doubts, international cooperation. Without international cooperation, any financial intelligence unit is fully blind and non-effective. And international cooperation plays in our activity, in financial intelligence activity, is a really very important role, I could say key role. And just a few words about my country, about Lithuania, and the reason is very simple. Why we would like to use this experience here? First of all, that in post-Soviet country, Lithuania was first country which adopted the law against money laundering using international standards. In this time, it was speaking about a time when law entered into force. This was January '98, and developing this legal act, Lithuania used a few documents. First, Financial Action Task Force recommendations. In this time, we had 40 recommendations, and later, also parallel, it was used European Union rules. Also, because these two documents, usually for all European Union countries, where Lithuania is a member of European Union from 2004, these two legal acts are really key elements of the anti-money laundering system. Next question, next step for country, of course, was appointment of the National Financial Intelligence Unit. Why? Because according to the international regulation, each country adopting anti-money laundering rules after approval of the law on anti-money laundering, on counter-terrorist financing, is obliged to create financial intelligence unit. In different countries have different experiences in this field, but in Lithuania, financial intelligence unit was established in the structure of tax police department, and a lot of activities of this unit was related with investigation of tax crimes, not only money laundering but tax crime as well. And next question, which will be more interesting, I think, for you, is development of analytical software which helps effectively analyze a large number of reports. Because speaking about development of financial intelligence unit, any financial intelligence unit, usually this structure starting from receiving from not maybe big amounts, not very big number of reports from different institutions. But after some period of time, all financial intelligence units starting to have one problem: how to analyze and how to collect, how to analyze bigger and bigger number of reports. And today, in my presentation for you, the main attention will be focused on development of special analytical software which support financial intelligence unit to analyze received reports from different institutions. Of course, we're speaking here about private sector, and I will show you how it's possible to do, what kind of indicator is necessary or useful to implement here. And next question about objectives of the activity of financial intelligence unit. Here, of course, number of this activity is not very large. But first, in the first place, is collection and analysis of information. But it's only one of the questions. Next question is topic or direction of the field, monitoring of the implementation of the anti-money laundering and terrorist financing national legislation. Because what is important for us, we must be sure, it means financial intelligence units must be sure that banks and other financial institutions or commercial structures present high quality information. That this information presented correctly according to the national legislation, and of course financial intelligence unit must be sure that this bank presented all necessary report. Because in my practice, in my 20 years practice, we identified unfortunately quite a lot of cases when reports presented by banks was not very high quality, first of all, and secondly, when banks avoid to present some information about customers in order, as we suspected, just to provide support to customer launder money. What of course it was strongly against current legislation, and these banks, after we established such cases, were punished very seriously. Of course, in different countries we have different system of punishment, but for example, in just a few days ago, I read in the newspaper that one of the biggest banks in Sweden, Swedbank, was punished for not 1 or 2 millions, but hundreds of millions of dollar fines because violated anti-money laundering regime. I think you could find this information in public sources as well. And next question, international and interagency cooperation. Of course, interagency cooperation is a very important element of the system, but maybe we'll discuss about that next time. But international cooperation, as already mentioned, it will be topic of our discussion, but a little bit later. And of course, speaking about results of national anti-money laundering system, prevention of course is number one, but speaking what does mean prevention? Prevention means that we really stop criminal activity in the very early stage. But unfortunately, how shows international experience, it is quite difficult to stop anti-money laundering actions in the very early stage, because the money laundering criminal act has some few elements. It's quite difficult to identify money laundering in very early stage. But in any case, result of anti-money laundering system must be clarified criminal cases, and these cases must be investigated, provided to prosecutors, and prosecutor must go one nice day with these cases to court. And court, of course, must to say a person is guilty for money laundering or not. And of course, if in case court recognizes person as guilty, if he will receive court conviction, which will be clearly identified what person did wrong, what kind of crime he did, details of this crime, and confiscation, of course, confiscation of criminal assets. Of course, it will be very good result, or the best results for financial intelligence unit. Okay, and speaking about information, reports. What mean these reports? Because I already mentioned a lot of time that reports, analysis of reports, receiving, collection, distribution of reports. It's quite special system, but we of course must understand what kind of element has this system, what kind of reports anti-money laundering institutions present financial intelligence unit. And usually here, speaking about worldwide experience, we have only a few types of reports. First, reports on suspicious activity or suspicious transactions, STR. Why? Because if we're speaking about some reports, we could say that it's very important not only receive report, but it's very important to have enough time to react to information. First of all, to conduct analysis of information, you have enough time to react. For example, in my practice was some reports when we received information that person planned just customer, one of the commercial bank, asked commercial bank to exchange 300,000 British pounds to 500,000 US dollars in cash. And of course, banks need some time for such operation, and bank asked his customer that to visit bank again and to get his 500,000 US cash, 500,000 US dollar cash just few hours later. What is normal? But during these 2 hours, bank informed financial intelligence unit about suspicious transaction of customer. And what do you think what happened with his money? Of course, customer receives his money, but he received not only money, but he received invitation to visit the office of FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit, and this invitation he received directly from hands of the officers of Financial Intelligence Unit, and he was obliged to go directly from the premises of the bank, directly to the premises of the Financial Intelligence Unit, where he received information that against him was started criminal investigation on money laundering. Because after he brought this 300,000 British pounds to bank, he didn't provide any information about source of his money. And a criminal investigation was just started in order to identify the source of money, criminal or not. Why we're speaking that reporting on suspicious activity is very important, because here we have quite limited time to react. Because other reports, maybe not so hot, not so, I could say, not reports which really need to very, very fast reaction. We're speaking about so-called transaction reports. Transaction reports usually speak in different countries, different experience, but usually it's experience or praxis when banks or other institutions inform about not suspicious transactions, but transaction, for example, above some threshold. And in our case, for example, in the case of Lithuania, this threshold is 15,000 euros, and if in cash, and if person did any operation, was involved in any operation or transaction of 15,000 euros in cash, of course, bank obliged to report automatically, but during 7 working days. Seven working days. Why? Because here is operation was not really suspicious. And in this case, when FIU received information, of course, FIU has a little bit more time for analysis and for reaction. I very apologize, but in my presentation here you will see not during 7 working days, but during 7 working hours. Sorry, it was some small mistake, because here we're speaking about 3 hours only in case of suspicious transaction. But in case of financial transactions or cash transactions, not suspicious, we're speaking about 7 working days. Sorry. Only one question, and difficult is what is quite difficult to understand for banks or other reporting entities, that here we need to, they obliged to inform us not only actually single transaction about 15,000 euros, but also about interrelated transactions, interconnected transactions. If, for example, maybe this transaction was done during 1 or 2 or 3 days, but according to the same agreement, for example, or implementing or conducting the same commercial operation, etc., but bank obliged to collect, may have special proper mechanism of collection of this information, analysis and identification of interconnected transactions. And in this case, usually we received information about above 15,000 euros in cash, and parallel we could receive information about 3 transactions, for example, above 5,000 euros every, but all these transactions are, for example, connected or interconnected because was done, for example, in order to pay some goods or some services according to one agreement. And also what is next group of information, what is very important, customs officers obliged to inform Financial Intelligence Unit about import or export of cash if amount of cash was above of 10,000 euros. As you know, different country again is a little bit different threshold. As you know, Russia such threshold is approximately 10,000 US dollars. And here, what is important, because from banks, long time, from banking institution, FIU required only to present information about suspicious transaction report, and it was all. Just it was a very clear request: please inform about suspicious transaction. Please inform about cash transactions. But later, because according to the international requirement, international anti-money requirement, also FIU started to ask banks not only inform, but also to freeze suspicious transaction or suspend conducting of this operation. Why? Because, as I told you, in case when it was arrested one guy with bag of $500,000, because in this time it was very good that FIU had enough time to react. But unfortunately, in many such operations, FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit, don't have time physically to react and arrest these guys, these bad guys. And on this reason, it was included in many international legal acts and national legal acts as well, was included very special requirement for banking institution, not only inform about suspicious transaction, but also freeze on self suspicious transaction. How it's acting, how it's functioning. For example, if we have bank and bank present information to FIU concerning suspicious transaction, but before reporting, bank obliged to stop this suspicious transaction and inform Financial Intelligence Unit during 3 working hours, as in Lithuanian case. Financial Intelligence Unit has at least 10 working days for analysis of information. Why it's important? Why FIU has these 10 days? Because bank was obliged not only inform about suspicious transaction, but make seizure or suspend this operation for 10 working days in order to give enough time FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit, to conduct analysis of such operation. And FIU, of course, 10 working days, maybe it's not so long period of time, but it's quite enough time to analyze operation and identify is client involved or related with this operation, it may be suspected of some criminal activity or not. If FIU identifies some suspicious on criminal activity, of course, banks received information that FIU already, not bank, but FIU started seizure of this transaction and started criminal investigation against customer of the bank. Bank receives this information, so-called feedback. Yes, but it's working. Now we have, speaking about Lithuanian case, we have only 10 days for freezing, but another countries, as I know, have 1 or 2 or 3 months for freezing. It means FIU and banks have quite a lot of power to suspend suspicious transaction for quite long period of time in order to give law enforcement institutions enough time just to investigate the case. And of course, if we're speaking about suspicious transaction, if we're speaking about indicators, what kind of indicators oblige use banks for in cases when they just discuss and analyze suspicious transaction and make decision, freeze or not to freeze suspicious transaction. And if we here speaking about a lot of different indicators. In many countries, such indicators were approved by decision of government maybe, or decision of head of FIU. And because why? Because these indicators must be really to be a framework for banks and other reporting entity for reaction to suspicious transaction. And of course support to identify suspicious transactions. And here I just present you as short list of such indicators which, for example, banks in my country use for seizure of operations. And here we're speaking, for example, if some customers started to take a lot of cash from banking account using, withdraw a lot of cash from an account using credit card. And in Lithuania it was identified some threshold 2,500 euros in cash within calendar day. Next question, a small number of clients of clients personal. It means if you have company open account, but we see that in company working only few persons, but amount of operation are really huge, and bank don't understand why small company is involved in so serious big transactions. And bank react to that. Bank is also obliged to freeze such operation just to clarify why clients started to conduct such big operations. And here, of course, we had quite a lot of job situations when, for example, banks frozen suspicious transactions, but we identify later that company were not involved in any suspicious transaction for IT companies. Some startups, when a few young people, IT expert, established company, start some new project and received a lot of money from investors. And of course, here in these cases, could be quite suspicious because young people, only a few persons, etc. But after analysis of transaction or source of transactions, banks identified with support of FIU that this money came not from any criminal schemes. Money came from good and big companies, or I'd say some investors, legal investors, the investor who was never involved in such criminal activity. Next indicator which could be used here or could mention here. For example, when persons start to take maybe not not big amounts of cash from account, but for example, quite often, and if in this case, for example, we identify in Lithuania 25,000 euros within 7 calendar days. But only in case if it's suspicious for bank and if bank don't identify, don't understand the reason of such operation, because before opening any account, starting business relation with clients, bank obliged first of all to ask what kind of activity carry out client, what kind of, for example, what kind of partners client will have in the future, or maybe some partners who involved in some commercial operations. No problem, but bank must understand that if for activity of clients it's quite usual to use cash operations, of course bank would react to that without any, I could say, nervous and without any freezing. But in such case, if bank identifies a client, small company, the client informs bank that all operation will be non-cash or related with some very, actually not very large business, but clients start to receive money to account and withdraw to conduct many operations, for example, in 7 calendar days. Of course, here we're speaking about a situation when banks are obliged to react to that. Next issue, if for example account in bank open but used exclusively only for transit operations. But usually here we're speaking about offshore companies which open account in one country just to use for money laundering, receive money in criminal way in another country, and use accounts only just for transfer. I could say if money received in the morning but already transferred to another country in the evening. It's mainly speaking usually that such accounts used only for transit operations. Next issue, active use of foreign bank cards. Of course, if we have some banks own, for example, networks of ITM or special cash machines, and this banks obliged also conduct analysis what kind of operations was done using this cash machine, because bank is responsible for this cash machine, and if bank identifies it, for example, using some business cards, some banking credit cards or deposit cards from different countries, it was really withdraw quite big amount of cash, bank obliged to react. But of course here will be quite difficult to make freezing of this card, because card was issued not by this bank, by another bank, usually foreign bank. But bank obliged to inform about such suspicious transaction with banking cards already presents information to financial intelligence unit. And of course, financial transaction of the account of offshore companies. Here, as I mentioned already before, usually such accounts are used for transit operation, but sometimes in some countries such accounts were started to use also for cash. What of course was first signal that if a foreign company registered in offshore zone started to use in daily activity some cash, of course for a bank it usually could be identified as red flag or signal about suspicious transaction. And now I move to another topic, a little bit of my presentation about analysis. How financial intelligence units conduct analysis of reports. Because here of course is question number one, key element of any effective anti-money laundering system of the country. And here, just using example of Lithuania, usually in every financial intelligence unit we have few departments. One department for analysis, and other department which is responsible for compliance activity. Compliance activities mean if, for example, it's necessary to create some legal acts, if it's necessary to create some rules, etc. Usually for such activity, or we call it usually bureaucratic activity, is responsible compliance department. Because Department of Analysis is obliged only for one activity, analysis of suspicious transactions. But in some countries, for example Lithuania, such department is responsible not only for analysis but also for supervision of activity of banks as well. And here, speaking about analysis system, we first of all development of strategy of any analysis system. We must understand what kind of analysis we would like to conduct. For example, speaking about money laundering, here is very important to understand that we have here two levels. I call that usually macro or micro level. What's mean macro level? Macro level, it means that a financial intelligence unit creating own analysis system, of course, must understand what kind of money laundering and terrorist financing risk identified in countries, what kind of threats are usually, for example, for country, or what kind of threats could really to make some huge damage for country, for example, for state economic, for state financial system, and on this reason, creating any operational analysis system, country, of course, obliged to understand own risks and own threats and all vulnerabilities related with money laundering and terrorist financing. But next level, after we identify this macro level, we understood this macro level, is micro level. Micro level, usually, if we speak already about development of the system of operational analysis of reports. And here, for us, it's very important IT level, because our main purpose of this analysis, an effective analysis system, creation such system which will never used by, say, manually, fully automated. The system must be fully automated, because if system just need to some personal human being activity, etc., it's not so good, because we say that experts obliged to develop indicators, IT expert obliged to translate this indicator from anti-money laundering language to technical language, and implement that in the system of different algorithms which support FIU to identify high risk transactions. And later, of course, I will show how it works. And of course, for us, it's very important, speaking about macro level, don't forget the human factor. Because usually, if we only use for operational analysis only softwares, of course, it's quite effective, but it's not so good. Because if software could analyze some operation only using algorithms created by experts. But of course, time is going, and some indicators could in one day could be already actually too old or non-effective. And on this reason, some experts acting in FIU or expert acting in some joint working group must always, always on daily basis, to check these indicators, identify some non-effective indicators, and of course try it or to improve this indicator, or to develop indicator, or maybe just to stop to use this indicator because non-effective, just to create new indicators and use for anti-money laundering system. And here, speaking about again about experience of Lithuania, for example, just as for example for you, how many transactions received per year anti-money laundering unit of Lithuania? In 2016, just a few years ago, it was approximately, its number was more as 500,000 operation reports. It was 562,000 operations per year, but it's quite big amount. It means it's only cash transaction, not suspicious transactions. Suspicious transactions report was approximately 500-600. But it was not a big problem to analyze these 500-600 operations. But for us, it was a huge problem to analyze 500,000 operations as we fixed. And for this, of course, for effective analysis, we developed special operational analysis system. How the system was created? First of all, the system was created started to be created, in 2012. And I could say that this system had, first of all, for this activity, we received quite serious budget from European Union, approximately 600,000 euros, what is it's really enough for development of the good system. And here I could say that we didn't create new system, we just developed previous system using new tools and very good experts, because experts for this activity were recruited from two areas. We received two kind of experts. First group of experts came from private risk analysis company. Why? Because we need just, in order to create some algorithm, it was necessary to develop these algorithms. it was necessary to use our previous experience of financial intelligence unit and identify these indicators which really support financial intelligence unit effectively analyze this river, huge flow of information. And secondly, of course, what kind of indicators, practical indicators, which supported to us to catch the fish or identify suspicious transaction in this river of information. And on this reason, of course, we recruited this private risk analysis company, and these guys already with experience from banking activity in banking institution, in financial services. These experts supported us to develop system. And next team, very good team, came from IT, private IT sector, because it was necessary after this analysis experts, analytics, we developed these indicators. Of course, it was necessary to translate this indicator to IT language, and here IT company, which was already our old partner, supported to do that quite effectively. And of course, what was created? Because for us, of course, procedure is very important, but for us, of course, it's very important to discuss about the results. And here, results could be recognized as system, first of all. We call that in our professional slang cash transaction risk analysis system. And system aimed to receiving, processing, analyzing, and transferring data on the cash transactions. Because for what kind of activity responsible FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit? First, receive information. Second, analyze this information. And third, to transfer information about really suspicious cases to law enforcement, because law enforcement is responsible for prosecution or criminal investigation of these cases. Second question, that main task of our system was to support us to conduct automatic analysis of each, I would like to know this word, each cash transaction transferred from banking institution. For example, some banks presented to us per week, for example, or once per 7 working days, present packages of information consisting from 1 to 2 or 3,000 of reports. And our task was to really to push this system, cash transaction risk analysis system, to analyze every of transactions using these special indicators. And of course, what is the key element of the system or strategic element system? Full automatization of the process of analysis. Full automatization, because my task, because I was senior manager in this structure, in this entity, Financial Intelligence Unit, my task was to really minimize the possibility to use human factor for analysis. And I will show you how it's happened. But my task was to really develop such system which will use for any analysis only databases, special databases, and only these IT tools support to identify some suspicious transactions. And how it was organized technically? It's been a reporting system. First of all, that banks and other reporting entities responsible for anti-money laundering systems, they were obliged to transmit all data to Financial Intelligence Unit only using external portal of FIU, using our website. Why? Because we created so good filtration system, and if any report was created wrongly or with some problems, system didn't allow to use to provide any such technically wrong report, and stopped and informed the sender or for a person who really tried to send this information that sorry, but your report is really wrong. It's not really enough information, necessary information, or you presented information which obviously is wrong. For example, where it's necessary to put date of birth, you included to this window the information about name of the company. And in this case, of course, filtration system really stopped reporting of such transaction. Next question, it is data transfer for more detailed analysis. What does it mean? It means that our task was, first of all, to organize so good analysis system, to create such net which really filter all this big flow of information, and to identify in this river some fishes, it means I call some suspicious transactions, and to inform leadership of Financial Intelligence Unit or senior analytics that look, we commercial bank presented us 3,000 reports yesterday. System analyzed this report and identified not 3,000, not 300, but maybe only 3 high risky operations. And please pay attention to that, please analyze. And of course, here is key element of such analysis system is external or internal databases which could be used for analysis. And here, speaking about this system, we have 2 types of system. First type of system is speaking about external databases. Why external databases are so important? Because FIU in reality is administrator only of few systems. It means administrator of own system. And here we speak about database of financial crime investigation service and database of financial intelligence unit. Because financial intelligence unit in reality was only part of big financial crime investigation department. And of course, for us was very important to use all data which collected financial crime investigation department for purposes of anti-money laundering, including, for example, information about started criminal investigation, information about persons involved in this investigation, etc., etc. But speaking about these databases, I just mentioned you only internal databases, and it was not so difficult to organize access of our analytical systems to these databases because our institution created these databases. But of course, for us was much more bigger problem to organize proper connection in online with other 12 external databases managed by different institutions. But fortunately for us, in Lithuania we have very strong national standards of databases, and usually all databases are managed using same rules. And for this reason, for us it was very easy to organize interconnection in online regime, and of course the possibility to use different type of information. For example, Social Security Fund is one of my lowest database, because here we have information about salaries of the employees of different companies. And if I have one person, for example, I receive information from banks that person, for example, X was involved in such suspicious transaction, I automatically, using Social Security Fund database, identify where this person working now, what kind of salary, how much he received salaries, and maybe where he working in the same time or where he worked before. It's quite good database. And I could tell here a lot of big, nice stories about different databases, but we're going, maybe it's later, maybe in our next presentation, because I just would like to only to show you some system of register which must be or must be used, or register which are very useful for creation of analysis system. Why? Because as I told you already before, our task of IT expert and higher and risk operation expert was I really identify some, I could say, algorithms, which put algorithms or formulas which support FIU to identify suspicious operations. And using already all experience of financial intelligence unit, means using all experience concerning started successful criminal investigation, using all experience of different type of serious investigation of serious economic crimes or financial crimes or drugs crimes, using also many groups of different type of data, we created 35 indicators which support to establish high risk operations. And now I would like to show you how it's work, how it's really, what kind of criteria we identify. For example, if our analytical system receives information report from banks that persons, customer, or involved or related to this operation in the same time is involved now or was involved in the future in the crime, and when he was, for example, during the investigation was identified as suspect person, when he was accused, or, for example, when court found this person guilty in committing a crime. Next issue, for example, when, for example, we have customer, of course, for customer identification was used, for example, some passport, but this passport already fixed in another system, for example, system of the Ministry of Interior, just as lost and unveiled. What it means? It means that we speak about risk is that this account is used without knowledge of customer, just using document of this customer. Next question. When bank provide operation and we identify in our internal system that maybe information related with same customer was already received from another bank and was already received as suspicious or unusual. for us it's just red flag. We need to react to that. If, for example, we speak usually about capabilities or economic possibility or financial possibilities of some person to conduct huge operations. If we speak that, for example, such operations, then person open account in the bank and put it to account quite large amount of money. But our system analyzes operation and presented quite interesting answers. That this person salary is very small. This person didn't, for example, was not owner of any serious property or high value property. That this person didn't sell in the just in some period of time before this operation some real estate or some property. It means system don't really understand where this person received money. And of course the system, using all our databases, system identify and inform us as red flag. For example, next issue, we see that cash import operations are not declared. What does it mean? It means if we see, for example, some foreign person in Lithuania, foreign citizen, who use quite a lot of cash or unclear money for purchasing, for example, some real estate or another operation, for example, for visits to casino, and we don't see any official source of this money in the territory of country, of course we start to suspect that person probably brought this money from another country. Good, it's not problem if person declares his money, as I told you before. For example, if it's above 10,000 euros, person obliged to, crossing border, person obliged to declare that. If it's not happened, according to Lithuanian legislation and legislation of many other countries, it's already crime, or at least violation. And if we identify that, if system informs us that, look, foreign citizen started to spend a lot of money, we of course start to suspect that this person probably smuggles his money in the country or received in another illegal way in the territory of country. Next issue, for example, real number of real estate transactions. If, for example, if we see that price of this real estate is not really realistic, it's not market price, and we say in this case it's possible if price is very small that persons or seller or buyer are involved to tax evasion case, or if price is too high for some premises or small apartment, but price is very high, we start to suspect just using this operation somebody tried to launder money. And other group of questions, of course, if other topics, if transaction related to offshore states or company registered in offshore jurisdictions where taxes are very low, then transaction of amount is unusually large, speaking about usual activity of person or financial possibility of these persons. That transaction, for example, is done in account of the company by person who is not really related officially with this company, is not director of the company, not bookkeeper, or is not any staff, but use this account. Later, if, for example, different person deposit or withdraw funds from the same accounts, or, for example, sometimes when non-profit organizations participate in suspicious transactions, the risk here usually with non-profit organizations quite low, but we need to remember that some recommendation or requirement of international legal acts, anti-money laundering legal acts, which really ask, in some cases, some specific non-profit organization really to create for this organization some special regime of control, because sometimes this non-profit organization could be involved in some operation related with terrorist financing. Next question is about, I don't like to go deeper and tell you about all these indicators because this is quite big. But here I would like to maybe to answer to your main question. Okay guys, you created this database, you used analytical database, of course, you used these many different external and internal database. You created different kind of indicators or algorithm or formula, but please tell us how this software really works. I mean, what was really technical framework for this software, and what kind of model this software used. I could say here I am not really mathematics expert, not teacher in this area, but as I was informed by my experts, that here we use the statistical model of logical regression. When logical regression is used to predict the probability of occurrence of a certain event by the values of a set of features. It means, if we're speaking about probability, if system analyze different type of information and say that probability that this operation is unclear or unusual or high risk is quite high. Why? Because system, for example, as I told you, identifies that clients was already convicted for crimes in the past. The client is person without clear incomes or without any, he or she are not owner of any property, etc. It means that probability that person started to use money without clear source is quite high. In our system, the task of our system is not really identify the direct way or direct evidences about criminal activity, but our task to really identify that person used money received from unclear source. If system support to identify, it's very good because we could really later to pay all attention only to these operations. Indicators. Indicators here we're speaking about that not really big number of indicators, size of operation, amount of operation, currency of operations, or some persons involved in this transaction, as I told you already, some person, for example, convicted before, or person who are not owners of any property, etc. And of course, what kind of operation analyzed? Usually, of course, we speak about cash operation, deposit or withdrawal operation. But sometimes bank inform us not only about cash, but about some banking transactions. And this system, analytical system, could also cover this transaction as well. And sometimes we receive quite specific operations, for example, carried out by notary. Because in reality, notaries are not involved in financial transaction, but notaries are involved to deals. And speaking about deals, here of course is very important that these deals also must be analyzed in the same way as, for example, cash transactions. And of course, the main result of our database to analyze, to identify, and to present analyst of FIU the highest level of possible risk. Operation which the system recognizes as very, very risky. And in this area, if we speak in that analytic received 3,000 reports or information about 3,000 transactions from one bank, but system support him identify only 3, 5 or 10 high risk operation, and of course for analytics it's very easy to start proper analysis and not really go to hundreds of operations, but take to hands only some very small group but very high risky operations. And of course, speaking next issue, it's just very briefly, of course, because we could discuss about this topic quite long time. But for me, it's also important in our topic now, in our discussion, to present you some international legal requirements. Why? Because national legal system or legal system of any financial intelligence unit must be based on the international requirements. And here, for countries which are not members of EU, of course, the key element, key document is 40 recommendation of Financial Action Task Force. But for EU countries, of course, this document is very important as well, but also it's necessary to pay attention to internal European Union documents. And here, European Union documents which clarify anti-money laundering rules, we call usually anti-money laundering directive. And in this field, in the last years, were developed and approved quite many directives. First directive, speaking about, we usually use the numbers. 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th. And 4th, it was AML directive. This directive was related with implementation of all 40 recommendations, and this directive was approved in 2015, and another directive a little bit later. But 5th EU AML directive is very important as well. Why? Because in this directive it's already recognized such issues, such problem as payment of virtual assets. It came from 5th EU AML directive, which was approved before similar or same requirement of ITF were approved. And but now I don't like go deeper to many documents, but I would like, of course, only make short stop speaking about virtual currencies, because virtual currency we understand very good how aggressive it's this financial instrument, and how difficult to control this financial instrument. Why? Because this instrument used its very quite level of anonymity, and all operations could be done without identification of customer, what of course not very bad for us, because if we push banks, financial institutions to identify customers, to know, to get information about names of owner of company, name of director, name of bookkeeper, name of beneficial owners. Here, we're speaking about virtual assets operations. Here, unfortunately, it's very, very difficult to speak about proper identification of person involved, because the main reason why this virtual currency was started to use to really to ensure the anonymity of person involved to operations. Next, and now last point, last issue of my presentation today is international cooperation. Why? Because as I told you, without international cooperation, national system of anti-money laundering is non-effective. And here the main international instrument which used financial intelligence unit of all countries is Egmont Group. Egmont Group created already in 1995 in Brussels and Egmont Castle, and this group was just named using this name of this castle. But this group is very important for us, because members of this organization are more than 160 financial intelligence unit, and this group, or French speaking, secure web, special information exchange system, very good protected of Egmont, support all FIUs to exchange information. For Europol, for European Union country, we have special organization as Europol, and Europol also has own information exchange system between financial intelligence unit. We call this system FIUNet. Next organization is Interpol, but Interpol more focused to police type of operations, to daily activity of police, but of course one of the important issue of Interpol responsibility is support to combat financial organized crimes. Next organization is European Anti-Fraud Office, special institution established by European Union, is part of European Commission, but this organization is responsible for investigation of fraud and other cases which could have negative effect for European Union financial system. Next is Eurojust organization. Eurojust is organization, it's agency for criminal justice cooperation. It means that for us it's very important to understand that if we start in criminal investigation, if we start to investigate criminal offense, we need usually we need also very good effective support from our colleagues from abroad, and in this case Eurojust is one of the best organizations which could really present countries support in the case of criminal investigation, or we usually call that pre-trial investigations. And of course also the last one, last but not least, it's CARIN. It's Asset Recovery Interagency Network, and this interagency network cover members of this this organization, already not financial intelligence unit, but other type of organization, asset recovery organization, usually called ARO. But here is I don't like to go deeper to this topic. It's another topic, but very, very close related with anti-money laundering as well. And usually financial intelligence units, they have very, very strong cooperation with national asset recovery offices as well. Okay, and speaking about FIUNet system, as I told you already, its system very similar to Egmont Secure Web, but administrated by Europol, was established in 2002. But now this FIUNet system use countries which are member of European Union, but not only. Also, the system has possibility to use exchange information country which signed so-called operational agreement with Europol. And speaking about financial investigation network, here I presented for you information only about financial intelligence unit. But please believe me, if you would like to organize proper investigation of financial crimes, of money laundering, much more organization must be involved to this procedure. And here financial intelligence unit is only one, but also we have here such important players as revenue services, customs services, criminal intelligence services, or law enforcement institutions, asset recovery offices, anti-corruption services, and of course, speaking about anti-terrorism, we need to mention such institutions as state security department, state security services. And of course, for us, it's very important that in this system we use prosecutors and use judges. And very briefly on the end, I would like just to tell you, just make some review, present a little system, at least financial investigation networks of some few countries, foreign countries, if you're speaking about US, because for me it's very easy to speak about that, because a very long time in my law enforcement agency in Lithuania I was responsible for international cooperation, and here I present you institution which really I had some partner relation and very good communication. Speaking about US, here we can speak about such organization as FBI, FinCEN or Financial Intelligence Unit of US, Department of Homeland Security, but usually here we cooperated with Border Guard Protection Service and Customs Service. DEA or Drugs Enforcement Agency, you already heard from the name of this organization title, it is DREX or institution which carry out investigation against crimes related to drugs. Secret Service, of course, Secret Service, we hear a lot about Secret Service, but as organization responsible for protection of President of US or other high-level persons, but I cooperated with Secret Service only in the case of money laundering, because they also carry out investigation of money laundering cases. Other services, few services, Marshal Service, and or Bailiff Service, and Internal Revenue Service. Speaking about Germany, here we have few organizations. First, Criminal Investigation Services, established in different levels, federal and counties, Bundeskriminalamt, Landeskriminalamt. Speaking about custom structure, we have also central level Zollfahndung with Zollkriminalamt and counties level or regional services, the Zollfahndungsamt. And speaking about the institution responsible for tax crime, it's Steuerfahndung or Fiscal Crime Investigation Services. Speaking about Great Britain, here I usually cooperated with three institutions: National Crime Agency, this institution has status of National Financial Intelligence Unit, Her Majesty Revenue and Customs, Serious Fraud Office. Why I tell you that, why I present that? Because later you have some interest, you could go and use, you could collect much more information about this very important institution from website of this institution, because here I don't really speak about some very secret organization. Also this organization have very good, excellent website, and you could really see how this institution what doing and how acting in the field of anti-money laundering. Italy. Here, financial intelligence unit is established as a central bank. The main institution responsible for financial crimes is Fiscal Crime Investigation Service or Guardia di Finanza, and also a lot of financial investigation conduct military police or Arma dei Carabinieri. But speaking about international cooperation, it's necessary to pay attention that not only law enforcement agencies play important role for national anti-money laundering networks, but sometimes some institutions, so-called financial market supervision services, also in some countries have power to conduct financial investigation of money laundering. In this area, I cooperated with U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. It's a very powerful organization of U.S. which control all market of securities or some trade of financial instrument and other issues, very powerful. And also UK Financial Conduct Authority, directly responsible for supervision all banking sector or financial service provider, because you know how UK market is one of the biggest market for financial service providers, and of course this institution plays a very important role, but not only to license, not only to supervise these actors of the market, but also to ensure that anti-money laundering rules are implemented properly. Here in my very brief presentation to you, I just presented to you few very important points of the anti-money laundering system, but okay, using already, for example, names of the international or foreign institution which I presented to you, or names of international institutions which are involved to anti-money laundering area, you of course could own self collect quite a lot of data if you have interest about that. But I think that I could present more information about international experience, first of all about international legal anti-money laundering acts in our next presentation. Thank you very much, thank you for your attention, keep in touch, and of course good health in this very, very difficult time. Thank you very much for your attention.